House of Parliament. We're just about to have the start of the evening session on day 2 of the debate. We had just before the break the contribution from
Honourable members, the question before the House.
Baptist, Representative Falabre.
Finance Committee on the estimates of expenditure for the financial year 2019-2020 in the sum of $1,591,589,000 and do agree that the said sum do form a charge against the consolidated fund and other funds of the state of St. Lucia. Minister for Infrastructure and Member for Castries North.
What's that? Get your highlighter too. Mr. Speaker, honourable members, before I venture into my presentation this afternoon on the 2019-2020 appropriation bill, permit me this opportunity as I beg for your indulgence and that of honourable members to draw to their attention a fatal accident which occurred at Port Castries aboard the MV Baltic Clipper at about 12:10 p.m. today. The incident involved the stevedore on board the vessel, where it is alleged that a full 40-foot reefer container, which was being loaded, made contact with him, squeezing him in the process. He was transported immediately to Victoria Hospital, where he was pronounced dead. I wish to extend condolences to the family of the deceased on behalf of the government, the Parliament, the Department of Infrastructure, Ports, Energy and Labour, and on my own behalf. Mr. Speaker, I further beg your indulgence to pause for a brief moment in silence.
Honourable member, I know you said we pause. Can we all stand?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank all of you, honourable members. Mr. Speaker, I am honoured to be given this opportunity to articulate my own assessment of this year's estimate of revenue and expenditure, with a focus on the Departments of Infrastructure, Ports and Energy, and the Department of Labour, and in so doing, to declare my support for the Appropriation Bill 2019-2020 as presented by the Minister for Finance. But, Mr. Speaker, before I move any further, I wish to address a few issues raised by a few members, opposite particularly, as it relates to their constituency and in some instances of national interest. The parliamentary representative for Castries East indicated the need for the paving of the Marshall Road. Let me assure the Minister that in the exercise of my duty, I have never practiced discrimination or victimization or preference, but to view the work of government and the delivery of services to its people in a very nationalistic and patriotic manner. And as a consequence, in the upcoming program to be funded through the Taiwanese loan program, the Marshall Road has indeed been identified. From the parliamentary representative, then, for a moment I thought nothing was ever done ever since we came in the last 3 years. And so he requested consideration for the Lapel Road, the Larissus Road diversion, all of which are on our program, guardrails in Grand Riviere, and I'll speak about guardrails as I move on, and also raise the issue of the reinstatement of the distress fund. I am sure the honourable member recalls. In the Prime Minister's statement as he introduced the appropriation bill, he indicated that in the last financial year, a sum of $5 million was expended in health care alone, meaning persons who applied to the Prime Minister's office, to the Department of Equity, and other departments seeking financial support for medical care and attention locally, regionally, and internationally. That amount, Mr. Speaker, comes from the contingency fund, which stands at approximately $10 million, and as a government, we are fully committed to the continuation of that assistance. But, Mr. Speaker, sometimes, administrations develop ideas, and it's their idea and their manner and their concept of executing certain services to the people. In the case of the last administration, it was called a distress fund. In this case, we felt that it was a fund that qualified as social assistance, and therefore it has been brought under that umbrella of social services to the people of this country. So whereas it is not called a distress fund, but the commitment, the passion, and the determination of the government, this government, to continue to assist the people survives. The guardrails I indicated, Mr. Speaker, I will deal with as I move on. The question of street lighting, and I must admit that it is a matter which must be resolved, and what we have found ourselves in is because of a change of policy, which I shall articulate in greater detail when we meet at the next debate, that once the policy was changed and a decision to re-examine the procurement and the funding model that was being offered, there was a lag time between Lucia's ordering of streetlights, and as a consequence, once we gave the green light to proceed while we recalibrate the system, once the first order was made, it took some time to replace burnt-out lights, and so parliamentarians were not able to get their requests or their needs as should have happened. The process we are reviewing, because there seemed to be some difficulty, some misunderstanding as to what the process is the process to go for constituents to go to parliamentarians Or are they to go to the Ministry of Infrastructure? Are they to come to the Minister for Infrastructure? Certainly not to the Minister for Infrastructure, but we are reviewing the process to allow the Ministry of Infrastructure to make a determination once a quota of lights are in and to alert parliamentarians what is due to them, and then they make the determination as to where those lights go. So whether you go to the Ministry of Infrastructure or you go to the parliamentarian, the lights will be placed based on priority and based on the quota that is in. In Castries South, Mr. Speaker, I believe the parliamentary representative who has disappeared understands very well the manner in which I operate as a Minister for Infrastructure. And in every case, I have always attempted to assist, and I note his request for the Bar Saint-Joseph Road, which is one of the roads on our program, and the Marigot Road, which is a critical tourism infrastructure. In Labrie, Mr. Speaker, the parliamentary representative spoke of the Castries-Grosley Highway, and though this administration took a decision, an economic decision, to review the Castries-Grosley Highway, I will soon be in a position to unfold or to present to this Parliament and the general public, once the Cabinet has approved a new concept of some of the infrastructure that we intend to put in place for the Castries-Grosley Highway. In fact, preliminary discussions with the Kuwaitis have indicated a burning desire to continue with the project, and very soon, hopefully, we will be traveling to Kuwait to seal the deal and to get this road infrastructure, this necessary road infrastructure in place. Mr. Speaker, if that proposal is implemented, not only will it present a more efficient roadway north and south, but certainly it will open up new and virgin territory and the potential for new housing and business economic activity in the north of the country without delaying the commute time between Castries and Grosley. The issue of the Heronora International redevelopment, Mr. Speaker, we have discussed this time and time again. We have attempted to give credit to one concept against the other. The fact is, this administration has taken a decision in which the decision is that we believe that we have the competence, we have the confidence, we have the ability, and we can manage our own assets and to bring the necessary reward and development to St. Lucia. The project is well on the way, and it is hoped that very soon actual physical work will commence on the redevelopment of the Heronora International Airport. The Carter Road, I believe there is agreement, and notwithstanding what the parliamentary representative for Labrie indicated, there is agreement and an understanding as to how we proceed with that piece of road in the Labrie constituency. I am very familiar with the road in question, and Mr. Parliamentarian, let me assure you that consideration will be given. I want to say that we will, yes, it's both of them. Okay? You want me to mention Marjamel for who's out there to hear. But let me also say, Mr. Speaker, that, that one of the things I would like to say is that in all that is done through the Ministry of Infrastructure, we have a very broad brush by which we execute our programs. For example, I will just give a cursory look at some of the areas that we've been able to conduct activity over the last 3 years. For example, in Dennery North, the Richmond Road was done, Bois-Joli, Montparnasse, costing $228,000. Boisjoli, Montpenache again, $146,700. Larissus, Denier Rivière, Grand Ravine, Lapel, or La Pearl, Richmond Ring Road, Larissus Main Road, Caddy, Denier Rivière Belmont, Grand Ravine. A number of those areas we have undertaken road repairs, drain construction, desilting, and bridge maintenance, and a number of other activities through the Ministry of Infrastructure. And I'm sure the parliamentary representative is very familiar with the works we have done in those areas. But, Mr. Speaker, having said all of this, and without engaging in any unnecessary debate with those opposite as to what was done and what has not been done, I must indicate that in making my presentation, I wish to give a brief review of the major departments and then look at the estimates as presented to this Honourable House earlier this week. Mr. Speaker, in the fiscal year 2017-2018, the Minister for Finance introduced a fuel tax of $1.50 to be added to every gallon of fuel purchased, with the main purpose, one single purpose, and that is of financing the road maintenance program of the government. As a result of this tax introduced, the Ministry of Infrastructure was allocated $14,235,000 or $253,305 in the 2018-2019 estimates of expenditure. Mr. Speaker, by my own experience and admission, this is probably the largest amount ever allocated to road infrastructure, and that is in terms of repairs and maintenance, operating and maintenance, for a very long time. As a responsible minister, blessed with dedicated and efficient staff, we heeded and supported the policy directive and have been able to implement a number of road maintenance works and respond to emergencies throughout the country. In 2018-19, the ministry carried out road maintenance activities throughout the island through an aggressive island-wide potholing and maintenance campaign in an attempt to keep existing infrastructure motorable, comfortable, and safe. And that has been the mantra. I am sure you would agree, Mr. Speaker, that the road network from Grosley to Heronora International Airport via the east and west coast highways and from cul-de-sac to Grosley has never been so well maintained in a while. We have also made quite a bit of impact on the secondary, tertiary, and community roads and other critical infrastructure throughout the island. Mr. Speaker, St. Lucia's road infrastructure isn't impeccable, but there are signs of improvement, and I'm very hopeful for this year's program, when implemented, that we shall see even greater improvements in the quality of our road network. As I have mentioned on several occasions, we intend to improve the riding surface of all primary and secondary roads to an acceptable condition in keeping with the International Roughness Index, IRI, through the application of science, technology, planning, and programmed interventions. And as I've said before, I'm sure members have seen the vehicles of the Department of Infrastructure appropriately identified, indicating the kind of activities that we're engaged in. Some of this I will articulate even further when we do the policy debate. We have, Mr. Speaker, also embarked on a very vigorous and aggressive road safety campaign, and measures have been taken with the installation of guardrails, signage, and signage island-wide. Road safety, Mr. Speaker, will form a critical plank of our policy priorities in the foreseeable future, but I shall say and elaborate more during the contribution in the policy debate. Some of the areas, Mr. Speaker, in which we have undertaken works include guardrails throughout the country, on the East Coast Road, West Coast Road, Millennium Highway, John Compton Highway, Castries-Grosley Highway, the city of Castries, Bannons Bay, and many other areas. Guardrails, Mr. Speaker, we have taken a decision to be a permanent asset within the Department of Infrastructure. So we're building on what has been established before. First and foremost, the ministry has had a tradition of having in stock a quantity of Bailey bridges that we intend to maintain, and even last year or year before last, when Dominica was devastated by the hurricane, St. Lucia was able to respond in quick time to provide them with a number of Bailey bridges for which they have already been replaced to maintain a steady stock of Bailey bridges for emergency cases. The other asset we intend, or fixture we intend to maintain within the department, is that of guardrails, to continue to install guardrails in the various locations as requested by parliamentarians until we are satisfied that we are providing a forgiving road which would allow motorists not to engage in fatality in case of a failure or fault on their part, but to be given an opportunity to maintain themselves on the road. You'll notice, Mr. Speaker, throughout the island, we have replaced signs throughout the island and mirrors. In 517 locations, we have replaced signs, traffic signs, directional signs, and in 10 locations so far we have replaced mirrors or installed mirrors to enhance the safety of those roads. This, again, Mr. Speaker, will be part of our permanent stock of assets, of road furniture, that we'll keep to maintain and to be able to respond in situations. But, Mr. Speaker, in the last fiscal year, 2018-2019, the ministry was given the responsibility, once again, for the caretakers program on the primary road network. I am certain that you can recognize the marked improvement along the highways as we are engaged in reducing the verges along the highway, utilizing the services of private contractors and equipment from the Ministry of Infrastructure to trim the verges, manicure in some instances, and to remove unwanted silt and other material that have accumulated for years at the road edges, thus preventing surface runoff from the road getting into the roadside line drains. This causes rut and ponding, one of the main causes of potholes and rapid deterioration of our road surfaces. Mr. Speaker, we ramped up our desilting of rivers and drains throughout the island, and in so doing, opened up waterways all over the country in a manner never done before. These funds also allowed us to carry out restoration works following the passage of Tropical Storm Kurt. This, Mr. Speaker, is proof that the gas levy tax was necessary and indeed achieves its objective. Having mentioned the gas levy, Mr. Speaker, I think it was raised early on in terms of the revenues derived from the gas levy. In 2017-2018, $2,051,542 plus $10 million, and that was for supplies and materials. Hire equipment, $10,160,933. Operation and maintenance, $2,494,248. A total of $16,706,723 was collected under the gas levy. That was for the year 2017-2018. In 2018-19, using the various categories, a total of $22,833,544 collected under the program. In 2019-2020, the projected amount, Mr. Speaker, is $26,026,408. All of these, Mr. Speaker, all of these are figures after the allocation for the interest on the Exim Bank is deducted. So, Mr. Speaker, what this speaks to is an initiative on the part of the government which allows the government, while it has placed a cap as to how high we can go, a ceiling, to control the price, having the consciousness of the need not to overburden our people, we're able to still accumulate sums in the tune ranging from $16,700,000 to $26,026,408 for 2019-2020. Mr. Speaker, as our contribution to the celebration of St. Lucia's 40th anniversary of independence, we embarked on the painting and improvements to bridge railings island-wide. What a safety sight to behold. Motorists and pedestrians can now identify the various bridge rails, and our country looks beautiful and well kept. It's a demonstration that we care about the people. But, Mr. Speaker, all of this complements a program of road safety which we intend to continue to maintain and to sensitize our population about. As we move forward, the government is at the moment engaged with a private company out of the United Kingdom, which has agreed to provide all of the directional signs required for the country to enhance our tourism product so as to allow individuals, as they drive on our roads, to know at various locations the distances away from the destination, the names of the communities, and to be able to feel comfortable as they drive along the roads. As we speak, Mr. Speaker, we're engaged with another company involved in the Millennium and West Coast Road, which is doing a comprehensive survey of our road network to determine the safetiness of our road network and also to enhance our connectivity with Google Earth to give us even more accurate information on locations and guidance as we use our roads. Mr. Speaker, let's examine the 2019-2020 estimates. And I would ask you to allow me to present my ministry's estimates of expenditure for the fiscal year 2019-2020. This comes on the heels of much progress in 2018-2019 amidst a situation of tight fiscal constraints. Mr. Speaker, the Ministry of Infrastructure has learned one thing, and that is to produce more with less while working smart. That we have been able to do over the last few years. In this year's estimate under Head 43, the Ministry has been allocated $122,251,100, with 65.28% or $79,807,000 being allocated towards capital expenditure, and 34.2% of that amount, or $42,444,100, which is or has been allocated to recurrent expenditure. We will continue to use this amount as efficiently and effectively as possible to gain maximum output within the Department of Infrastructure. And so, in so doing, let me deal with some of the areas where emphasis will be placed. Reconstruction and rehabilitation of roads. Head 43, page 569, 0102. $11,437,998 for the rehabilitation of our roads, which continues to require much attention and provides much financial and emotional distress to road users. Some of the roads to be repaired are likely to include the following: resealing of the Mon to Amandale and the Deglo to Twapiton roads, resurfacing of secondary roads such as the Old Military Road and canals to Vigier roads. Mr. Speaker, in my policy statement, I will elaborate on a more comprehensive list which will be considered under the Taiwanese loan program, which we are hoping to implement in the very near future. Operating and maintenance, Mr. Speaker, is the program under which we continue to maintain our roads, to do our necessary potholing. And as I've indicated and as highlighted under Head 43, 1207, 1208, and 1103, we have introduced, it reflects the introduction of the fuel tax. I'm again pleased to inform this House that my ministry is expected during this financial year to receive under this program $11,659,002 to continue with its road maintenance program. Mr. Speaker, the following are some of the works planned for this financial year. 1, desilting of rivers. As we indicated last year, we moved the allocation for desilting from $1.4 million to $4.5 million. And so we saw a tremendous effort taking place throughout the island, to the extent that in some of the flood-prone areas, traditionally, which would flood through heavy rainfalls, in communities like Bexon and Mark and some of those areas, we saw an improvement in the system as we were able to do a lot more in those communities. We are hoping, Mr. Speaker, without wavering on the allocation for desilting, that we shall continue further desilting this year and to reach out to areas that we are unable to reach out to last year, to ensure that through proper maintenance, to prove that through proper maintenance, we can deal with the problem of flooding by simply doing what must be done, and that is to keep the channels open and to allow the storm waters to flow freely in the various low-lying communities. Mr. Speaker, last year, very late last year, we introduced the Caretakers Program, which was removed some years ago, but which has been reintroduced under the Ministry of Infrastructure. And the Caretakers Program, which is now under